to live in Egypt in time of famine and increase in the land of Egypt. A nation must have a constitution and a law to govern it. The only law ever revealed from heaven was received by Israel at Mount Sinai. Upon receiving this law, they became a great nation of promise. The scriptures indicate at least 6 reasons for the revelation of this law. The law, you want me to read all 6 of them?
Yes, please.
The law revealed God's glory and holiness, manifested in the sinfulness of man, marked Israel as God's chosen people, and gave Israel a godly standard by which they might continue to inhabit Canaan, and prepared Israel for the coming of the promised seed, and illustrated in various forms and ceremonies the person and the work of Christ.
Okay, let's read Hebrews 10, verse 1. Turn to the book of Hebrews. Mark, you read 10, verse 1.
For since the law has but a shadow of the good things to come, instead of the true form of these realities, it can never by the same sacrifices that are continually offered every year make perfect those who draw near.
The law could never make anyone perfect. It only prepared the way for Jesus Christ, who could make people perfect. That was the wonderful thing that we read in chapter 9 of the book of Hebrews, beginning in verse 11, Mark.
To how far?
You're going to read down through 14.
Okay. But when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things that have come, then through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, he entered once for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of defiled persons with the ashes of a heifer sanctify for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to serve the living God?
Absolutely. Jesus' blood cleanses our conscience from acts that lead to death. The law could only cleanse you outwardly. Verse 15 says, for this reason Christ is the mediator of a new covenant, that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, now that he has died as a ransom to set them free from the sins committed under the first covenant. So all of the people who lived according to the law before Christ were forgiven of their sins by Christ and his law, the new covenant. That covered all of those people who died before, and is for everyone who obeys Christ and is baptized into Christ, receives the Spirit of Christ, and lives for him from now on. Now, let's look at what it takes to make a nation. First of all, it takes land. And then it takes a law, and it takes people. You have to have all 3 of those in order to have a nation. And God has promised Abraham that he's going to make of him a great nation of people. Let's read the promises. First to Abraham in Genesis 17, 2 through 6, Alana, and verse 15 through 19. And Emily, I'd like for you to look up Genesis 26, 1 through 4. It's renewed to Isaac his son. And then, Martha, you look up Genesis 28, 3 through 4, and 10 through 13, and you'll see that same promise renewed to Jacob, who is Isaac's son. Okay, Lana, would you read Genesis 17?
And I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, as for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I will make you the father of a multitude of nations. And I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come forth from you. Then God said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her, and indeed I will give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. King of peoples shall come from her.
Okay, to Abraham and to Sarah, God makes this promise. I'm going to make of you a great nation. He calls it a nation of people. And so he's making a nation of them, not just increasing their descendants, but making a nation of them. In order to have a nation, you're going to have land, law, and people. Okay, Genesis 26, 1 through 4.
There was a famine in the land besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham, when Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. Then the Lord appeared to him and said, Do not go down to Egypt, live in the land which I shall tell you. Dwell in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I give all these lands. And I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. And I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I will give to your descendants all these lands, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed.
Okay, all nations of the earth are going to be blessed through the seed of Abraham, and that seed promise is given to his son Isaac, and he says, I'm going to make great nations of you. And then to Jacob. Martha?
Today, God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers, until you become a community of people. May He give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham.
And 10 through 13.
Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night with his son and said, taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying.
Okay, the promise was renewed, was given to Abraham, was renewed to his son Isaac, and renewed to Jacob, his son. All three of them are told, I'm going to make you a great nation of people. And I'm going to make your descendants great, and you're going to make your name great. And I'm also going to bless all the nations of the earth through you, through your seed. So, the original promise God made to Abraham is renewed to his son Isaac and to his son Jacob. Now the children of Israel are going to have to be made into a nation of people. Now they're just a small group of people. There are 75 of them who leave and go from Palestine down to Egypt. 75. That's not a nation of people. That's just a big family. But they're going to have to become a great nation. So God's going to have to do some things to make these people into a nation. It starts with Jacob's sons. He has 12 sons. And one of these sons, the next to the youngest of the sons, his name is Joseph, comes to his brothers and tells his brothers a dream that he had. The first dream, he told him, I saw these sheaves, and they were all standing erect before me. And then all of the sheaves bowed down before me. And his brother said, does that mean that we're going to bow before you? And they hated him because of his dream. And then he had another dream that he told his mother and father. And the stars, the sun, and the moon all bowed down to him. And his dad was really years when things were really great. He stood up all the grain, and people brought their grain and gave it to him, and he put it in these great, big, huge...
And he mortgaged the
granaries.
property and everything.
Yes. And then in the 7 years of famine that came. The first year of famine was bad. The second year of famine got worse, and the second year of famine was bad enough that Jacob and his family were starving down in Palestine. And so Jacob told his sons, I want you to go up to Egypt and get grain. I hear there's grain up there. He gave them money and put it in their patches, and they had their money bags. Each one of the 10 brothers the 10 brothers took their bags and had money in it, and they went up to Egypt in order to buy the grain. Alana, would you like to tell the story?
No.
No, you wouldn't. Emily, would you?
Wait, which one is it?
You're telling the story of Jacob's sons, 10 of them, going up to Egypt to get grain. What happened?
He
Did-
pretended not to know them.
Also recognized his brother.
Yeah,
They didn't recognize
he
him.
knew them, but he pretended not to, and they didn't recognize him. And he,
Was he kind to them?
not really. And
Okay.
then he told them to bring back Benjamin, and then he kept one of the brothers in jail to make sure that they came back with Benjamin.
Which one did he keep?
Was it Judah?
The eldest.
That's
Reuben or
No,
Simon?
Reuben, okay.
I don't.
He kept the eldest one.
I thought it was Simon.
Go ahead.
But anyways, he disguised himself, and he went in the jail and talked to him. And then when the brothers came back, they brought Benjamin. And he
What
was-
happened when they went home?
Oh, Jacob didn't want him to go because
Why?
he was the youngest one, and he was the only son he had left from Rachel. Yeah, and he didn't want to lose him too, but he let him go anyways. And so they went back to the palace, and yeah, he was extra nice to Benjamin because he's his favorite brother, and he gave him extra food and stuff. And I think in that trip he
invited them to dinner.
he invited them to dinner, and then
And how did he seat them? At the
By
table.
birthright.
By birth.
Oh.
The oldest to the youngest. And they were amazed at that, and they wondered, how's this guy know this? And so the youngest brother got 3 times as much food as all the rest. Then what happens?
I think, is this the trip where he frames them with stealing the cup?
Yes.
Yes.
He takes their money and sends them home. And what happens on the way out of town?
And they realize that they, wait, you said he stole their money?
Huh?
You said he stole their money?
He gave them all of their money back. All of their money back was in their bags, and all their money was there. And they marveled at that. And there was, what was in Benjamin's sack?
It was,
Silver cup.
yeah.
What cup?
The king's cup.
Pharaoh's cup or either,
The Pharaoh's cup.
Joseph's.
was it Joseph's cup?
Was it
Joseph's
Yeah.
cup that he did what with?
He implanted it in one of the grain, back of grain.
Yes, and
Benjamin said,
what was that cup for?
Wasn't it serving Pharaoh?
No,
No?
it was for Joseph, and it was because he could tell fortunes with that cup.
I
And
remember that part.
he said to them, don't you know that I can tell fortunes with this cup? I know these things. And so, what happened?
Doesn't he want to keep one of them in jail again? Yeah, he wants to keep Benjamin.
They came back. They're all out of jail now. They come back. They're brought back by Joseph's servant to him. And Joseph does what?
He pretends to get mad at them because they think that they got their money back, and that he thinks that they stole his money and the cup.
And Benjamin is going to be, the one whose sack the cup is found is going to be what?
Killed?
Kept in jail,
Prison. Right.
in Joseph's jail. And they go through all the sacks, and the cup is found in Benjamin's sack. And so then Joseph listens to them talk. They don't know that he can hear them or can understand them. They think he speaks Egyptian. but he speaks their language because he's their brother, and they don't know he's their brother.
And they think it's payback time.
Yeah, and they think, uh-oh,
He's paying us back.
remember what we did to our brother? They actually talked about this.
Yeah, well, they thought he was paying
And
back. what they
Joseph
did
heard
to
them
him.
talking
He
about
didn't know.
that,
They
and he
didn't.
runs away into his room,
With
to
his
his
pride.
closet, and does what?
Cries.
Weeps greatly.
Judah was begging, wasn't Judah begging, please don't do this, you're
Yes.
gonna kill our dad?
Yes.
His gray hairs are gonna go down to the grave when he hears about this.
We have another brother that we've lost. We had this brother and the other brother that we've lost. And Joseph goes in and cries. And he cries so violently that everybody in Egypt hears him.
Oof.
And he comes back out and he tells the brothers, I'm your brother Joseph. And he
You
said,
didn't tell them that they went back to get the dad?
no, he told them
Yeah.
then.
I think so.
He told them, I'm your, I'm your,
No, but you didn't tell that part.
no, that we haven't got to that part yet. And so he tells them that he's their brother that they sold into slavery. He said, God intended this for your good. And he said, you intended it to me for harm, but God intended it for you for good.
Yep.
And so he gives them all of their grain, gives them carts and all kinds of things to take back home to bring his family back. He says, go get your dad and bring him back. They all go home with the stuff. They go to their father, and they tell their father, Joseph is alive. And their father says, no, he's not. He's dead. And he couldn't believe it, because he's, for all of these years, thought his son was dead.
I was kind of shocked when I first did this study that God actually caused the famine. At first, I thought it was just a famine, like
No.
a normal famine. But then, when I actually read that God caused it and cured it, that blew me away. I was like, really? And so I had a moment with God where I had to kind of absorb all of that He did both of them. I was like, oh,
Isn't that
why
amazing?
would you do that? I was just like,
That's
but
amazing.
I got over it. He caused the famine.
God caused the
And
good years and he caused the bad years both. It was God's doing. And the reason Joseph told Pharaoh, the reason Pharaoh had the dream 2 times,
To get him up to Israel.
is because God is telling you this is certainly going to happen. It's certain. The repeating of the dream meant that it was certain. So, Jacob finally believes. After he sees all the carts of goods and everything, he
Yeah.
finally believes them.
Mm.
And he says, I'm going to go down to Egypt and see my son. And so they all load up, the whole family, and 75 of them go. 75 family members at this point. It started out with Abraham and Isaac and his mother. And now it's Jacob and his sons and daughters and grandchildren. And the whole family has grown to 75 now who go down to Egypt. God has told Abraham they're going to be there how many years?
400.
400 years. And in the 4th generation, they're going to come out of the land of Egypt. And so, Joseph tells them, when you leave Egypt, I want you to take my body with you. And so they promise that they'll do that. And and Moses and Aaron remember that and take his bones with them. So Israel is made into a great nation there in Egypt. They're given the best land of Egypt. They raise cattle and they take care of all of Pharaoh's cattle, and they become very wealthy, and they become a huge group of people. So many that a Pharaoh comes up who doesn't know anything about Joseph. And he doesn't know anything about what's happened. He just knows that these people, this huge group of people, are living here among them.
I think that's why someone said that they think that was a foreign pharaoh. He wasn't a homegrown Egyptian like an Ethiopian. Somebody
Yes.
that was not familiar with the story. Because who could not be familiar with what he did?
I know.
It had to be a foreigner.
Had to be. And so, this new Pharaoh says, we want to keep these people from growing anymore. And so they they had told the wives, the midwives, when a boy baby is born, we want that boy baby put to death. And so the midwives were having these women come to have their babies, and the babies would be born, and the midwives would not even know about it. And Pharaoh was asking, why are these babies increasing? And they said, well, these Israelite women are strong women, and they give birth before we get there. And so he says, from now on, every male baby that's born, I want thrown into the sea and killed. So Moses is born. Moses' mother takes him as a baby and puts him in a basket and floats him down the Nile River. And she floats him right by the place where Pharaoh's daughter is bathing with all of her girlfriends. And she hears this baby crying in this basket. She hears this baby crying in the basket. And she has her girls go out and get the basket and bring it to her. And there's this little baby boy there. And she just falls in love with him instantly. And she wants to take him into her home and raise him. Miriam, who is Moses' older sister, was watching all of this. And she comes up and she says, would you like for me to get him an Israelite mother to come and feed him? You know, well, a wet nurse, an Israelite wet nurse to come and feed him. And she said yes. And so she went and got his mother. And his mother comes and feeds him all this time and tells him all about who he is and where's he from and everything. And we'll continue this lesson next week.
Okay.
All of this is just to fulfill that promise way back yonder.
All of this is just to fulfill the promise that God made to Abraham when he said, I'm going to make of you a great nation.
But also, you know, that's probably one of those kind of stories that you can
Want to turn it off?
Yeah.
come to this question as to why